I sat on the cold bathroom floor and cried. My baby was screaming in the other room, and I hadn't showered in 5 days. My name is Maya, and I am 31 years old. This is the story of how motherhood slowly erased me. When I found out I was pregnant, I was the happiest I had ever been. My husband, Ethan, and I had been trying for a year. When we saw the positive test, we held each other and cried tears of joy. We called our families first, then our friends. Everyone was excited. Ethan works as an engineer for an international company. He travels often, sometimes for weeks to other countries. But we knew this before I got pregnant. We talked about it. We made a plan. My friends promised they would be there for me. I had 3 close friends, Lena, Sophia, and Grace. We had been friends since college. We did everything together: dinners, movies, weekend trips. When I told them I was pregnant, they screamed with joy. They threw me a baby shower. They bought gifts. They hugged me and said, "Don't worry, Maya. We'll help you. We'll bring food. We'll take care of the baby. You won't be alone." I believed them with my whole heart. I felt lucky. I felt safe. My pregnancy was normal. I worked until I was 8 months along. Then I took maternity leave and prepared the nursery. I washed tiny clothes, folded blankets, and read books about motherhood. Ethan was home for the last month. He came to every appointment. He held my hand and whispered, "Everything will be okay." He said, "I'm sorry I travel so much, but your friends will help you, and I'll come home when I can." I said, "I know. We'll be fine." Our baby girl was born on a Tuesday morning in March. 20 hours of labor. I was exhausted and shaking, but when they placed her in my arms, everything felt worth it. We named her Aria. Ethan stayed for 2 weeks. He cooked for me, held Aria, changed diapers, and helped me rest. He was wonderful. But then he got a call. An emergency project in Germany. He had to go. He cried when he left. "I'm so sorry, Maya. I don't want to leave you with a newborn, but this job supports us." I said, "It's okay. Go. We'll be fine." But I wasn't fine. Aria cried constantly. She woke up every 2 hours. I was so tired I could barely think. My body still hurt from giving birth. I felt scared and overwhelmed. My friends visited once, 3 days after Ethan left. They brought flowers and food. They held Aria, took photos, stayed for an hour, and said, "Call us if you need anything." I thanked them. I thought they would come again soon. They didn't. That first week alone was awful. Aria cried and cried. I tried feeding, changing, rocking. Nothing worked. I cried with her because I didn't know what else to do. I hadn't showered in 3 days. I wore the same clothes every day. My hair was greasy and I smelled horrible. Every time I tried to shower, Aria cried again, and I had to run to her. I texted my friends, "Hey, I'm having a really hard day. Can anyone come for an hour so I can shower?" 2 hours later, Lena replied, Sorry, stuck at work. Maybe this weekend. Sophia didn't reply. Grace wrote, Hang in there. You're doing great. But nobody came. Weeks passed. I took care of Aria alone. I was always tired. I couldn't remember the last proper meal I ate. I grabbed snacks while she slept. The apartment was a disaster. Bottles everywhere, laundry piled up, dishes in the sink. Every time I cleaned, Aria woke up crying. Ethan called daily from Germany asking, How are you? How's Aria? I always said, We're fine, even though I was drowning. My mom couldn't come because my dad had knee surgery. My mother-in-law visited once, held Aria for a few minutes, then looked around the messy apartment and said, In my day, we managed fine alone. Mothers today expect too much help. Her words cut me deeply. She didn't help. She didn't offer to hold Aria so I could shower. She just judged and left. I was completely alone. One day, I finally managed a quick shower while Aria slept in her bassinet. The warm water felt like heaven. I cried from relief. When I came out, I saw messages in our group chat. I smiled, thinking maybe they were checking on me, but they weren't. They were planning brunch for Sunday. Pictures of a new restaurant. Excited messages. Inside jokes. Nobody asked me to join. Nobody mentioned me. I typed, That sounds nice. Can I bring Aria? I waited. 10 minutes. 20. An hour. Finally, Lena said, Oh, we didn't think you'd want to come with a newborn. Babies are a lot at restaurants. Sophia added, Yeah, maybe when she's older. Grace sent a sad emoji. I put my phone down and cried. They had moved on without me. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. The next morning, while my friends enjoyed their brunch, I walked around my small apartment carrying Aria against my chest. She was crying again, and her tiny hands clutched my shirt like she was afraid to let go. I felt my body ache with exhaustion. My clothes were stained from milk, and my hair was tied in a messy bun that hadn't been brushed in days. As I bounced her gently, I checked my phone again, even though I knew there would be nothing new. I saw the photos my friends had posted online from the brunch, bright plates of food, fancy drinks, and the three of them smiling so widely it looked like they were living in a different world. A world that no longer included me. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I hardly recognized the woman staring back. My eyes were swollen from crying. Dark shadows sat under them, and my shoulders were slumped forward from carrying Aria all day. I reached out and touched the mirror lightly, as if I was trying to connect with the version of myself I used to be. The woman who had time for friends, who dressed nicely, who wore makeup, who laughed, who mattered. Now, everything felt distant, like a previous life I could never return to. That evening, I tried again to reach out. I messaged Lena privately. Hey, I really need someone to talk to. Can you come for an hour? The message sat there for 3 hours before she finally replied. "Sorry, today is insane. Maybe next week." I read the words again and again. Next week. Everything was always next week. But next week never came. There was always work, or plans, or exhaustion, or her boyfriend, or something else that mattered more than me. I tried Sophia next. "Hey, I haven't seen you in forever. Would love for you to meet Aria properly." She replied, "OMG, yes. We have to do that soon. I'm buried in work right now." But soon never arrived. And then I tried Grace. "I miss you. Can we at least video chat?" She replied, "Miss you too. I'll call this weekend." But the weekend came and went, and no call ever came. After that, I didn't reach out again. I stopped trying. I was tired of begging for attention and feeling like a burden. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. Aria reached 3 months old, then 4, then 5. There were small, beautiful moments, like when she smiled at me for the first time, when she fell asleep on my chest, when she reached out and held my finger with her tiny hand. But most days were heavy, slow, and lonely. Ethan came home twice during those months, each visit lasting only a few days. He tried to help, but he had no idea what those long, lonely days felt like. He didn't know the way silence could become a weight on your chest, or how a baby's crying could make your heart race with panic because you were the only one who could help her. He didn't understand the fear of doing everything alone. Once, on a particularly hard night, Aria had cried for 3 hours straight. I had walked around the apartment bouncing her until my arms shook. I tried singing to her, feeding her, rocking her, changing her, but nothing worked. My head pounded, my back hurt, and my vision blurred with exhaustion. When she finally fell asleep, I sat down on the floor and sobbed. I cried until my whole body trembled, and in that moment, I wished, just for a second, that I could disappear, that someone else could take my place even for a few hours so I could breathe again. Around that time, I joined an online support group for new mothers. It wasn't the same as real-life company, but at least I could talk to people who understood. Women who had also been abandoned by their friends, or judged by their mothers-in-law, or left alone by partners who had demanding jobs. Women who cried in the bathroom just to have 2 minutes of quiet. Women who felt invisible. I read story after story from mothers whose friends had disappeared as soon as they had a baby. "My friend stopped inviting me out after my son was born," one woman wrote. "They didn't even ask if I could come." Another wrote, "Everyone promised to help me. None of them showed up." Another, "I was drowning, and no one cared." I cried reading those posts because they were my story too. At least in that group, I wasn't alone in being alone. When Aria reached 6 months old, I saw my old friends in person for the first time. I ran into them at the grocery store. They were together, pushing a cart filled with ingredients for a dinner they planned to cook together. They looked exactly the same as before, pretty, rested, put together. Their hair was styled, their clothes looked new, and their faces glowed with the peacefulness of people who slept through the night. When they saw me, their faces lit up. "Maya, oh my God, we miss you. How are you? How's the baby?" they asked. I stood there with Arya in her stroller, wearing leggings that had a stain on the knee and a shirt with milk marks on it. My hair was in a messy bun, and I had barely slept. I forced a smile. "I'm okay. Tired," I said. Lena replied, "We should get together soon, seriously." Sophia added, "Yes, we really have to meet up properly." Grace said, "Let's plan something." I nodded and said, "That would be nice." But inside, I knew the truth. They weren't going to plan anything. These were just words. Words people say when they don't want to feel guilty. Words that sound warm but mean nothing. They hugged me, kissed Arya's head, and then said they had to go because they had groceries to buy and dinner to cook together. I watched them walk away, laughing and chatting. I pushed my stroller home alone. That night, when Arya was finally asleep, I checked their social media. There they were, cooking together, drinking wine, laughing, watching a movie. They were glowing in their photos. They were having the time of their lives, and I wasn't even a thought in their mind. I wasn't invited. I wasn't missed. I wasn't even mentioned. I used to be part of that group. I used to cook with them, watch movies with them, plan trips with them. But now, I was just someone they used to know. Someone they no longer had space for in their shiny, childless, effortless world. Around this time, something new happened. I developed anxiety. It wasn't dramatic at first. It started small, like feeling nervous when the doorbell rang, or feeling overwhelmed when my phone buzzed. I felt scared to leave the house with Arya because what if she cried in public? What if people stared? What if I wasn't strong enough to handle it? Every day became a battle between wanting a break and being terrified to go anywhere. My mother-in-law continued to visit rarely, and each time she made comments that cut deeper than she realized. "You look tired," she said once. "You need to take better care of yourself." I wanted to scream. How? When? With what help? But I stayed silent because that's what mothers are expected to do: smile, nod, and pretend everything is fine. Pretend we aren't drowning. One afternoon, when Arya was 8 months old, I tried to take her for a walk just to get fresh air. As I stepped outside, pushing the stroller, I passed a group of young women sitting outside a cafe. They were laughing loudly, their hair shining in the sunlight, sipping iced coffees. They reminded me so much of my old life that I felt tears sting my eyes. I quickly looked away and kept walking. Later that night, when Ethan called from Germany, he told me he missed me. "I miss you too," I said, but it came out flat because I didn't have the energy to make it sound real. He said he wanted to help but didn't know how. And that was the hardest part. No one knew how to help, and yet no one tried either. I was invisible. Time kept moving even when I often felt stuck in the same place. By the time Arya turned 1, life became easier in some ways. She slept longer, she smiled more, and she showed her little personality. But the loneliness inside me did not go away. It stayed like a quiet shadow. The newborn chaos slowly faded, and in its place came a long silence that reminded me of how much I had lost. I used to paint, read for hours, go out with friends, and take care of myself. Now everything in my life was connected to caring for Arya, and I did not know who I was anymore. I tried to reconnect with myself. One morning, I took out my old makeup bag and tried to put on mascara. After one stroke, Arya started crying. I looked at myself in the mirror with only one eye done and burst into tears. I wiped the makeup away and put everything back in the drawer. Another time, I tried reading a book, something I once loved deeply. But now, I could barely get through 2 pages without feeling tired or being interrupted. After a few days of trying, I placed the book back on the shelf. Even small joys felt out of reach. Things began to change when Arya turned 18 months old. She started going to a small morning playgroup twice a week. It was only for 2 hours, but it felt like breathing fresh air after a long time underwater. I used that time to sit quietly in a cafe near the playgroup. I did not do anything important. I simply watched the world move around me and felt a small piece of myself come back to life. At the playgroup, I met other mothers. We began with small conversations about sleep and feeding schedules. Over time, those conversations grew into real connections. One mother, Hannah, invited me to join her and a few others for coffee. I almost said no because I was afraid of feeling out of place, but her warm smile made me agree. It turned out to be one of the best decisions I made. These women understood what loneliness felt like. They knew the exhaustion, the fear, and the guilt. I did not need to explain myself to them. Being with them made me feel seen for the first time in a long time. Meanwhile, my old friends continued living their lives. I still saw their photos online. Beach trips, movie nights, birthday dinners. They looked happy, surrounded by each other. I no longer waited for an invitation from them. A quiet acceptance formed inside me. I had not lost them in one moment. It happened slowly, little by little, until there was nothing left to hold. One afternoon, when Arya was almost 2, I saw them again at a cafe. This time I was with Hannah and Laura from the playgroup, and our kids were in strollers. My old friends came over with bright smiles. They said they missed me and asked about Arya. We talked politely for a few minutes, but it was clear we no longer understood each other. Their world was full of travel, parties, and late nights. Mine was full of nap times, laundry, and early mornings. When they said we should plan something soon, I smiled and said they could let me know. But I no longer carried their words home with me. I left the cafe with my new friends, feeling supported instead of forgotten. Ethan started coming home more often after Arya turned 2. He still traveled for work, but he tried to be more present. One night, after Arya fell asleep, He sat next to me and said he did not realize how hard things had been for me. I told him I did not know how to say everything without sounding ungrateful. We talked for a long time, something we had not done in months. He apologized for not seeing the signs earlier. It did not erase the loneliness I had lived through, but it helped me feel less alone in the present. Around this time, my new group of mom friends came over for a play date. The apartment quickly became messy with toys, snacks, and children running around. It was noisy and chaotic, but it felt warm. No one judged anyone. When juice spilled on the carpet, everyone helped clean it. When someone admitted she had cried that morning, everyone understood. It was the kind of support I never received from my old friends. I looked around and felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt like I belonged. During one play date, Hannah touched my arm softly and said, "You are not invisible, Maya." I looked at her with surprise. She nodded toward Arya, who was laughing with another child. Hannah said, "You are her whole world, and you matter to us too." Her words stayed with me long after everyone left. Motherhood did not erase me. It changed me into someone new. I was no longer the woman who could go out on weekends or stay up late with friends. I was someone who learned strength through long nights, who survived loneliness, and who gave everything to her child without stopping. I was Maya, a mother who was slowly rebuilding herself. I still feel invisible sometimes, but I am no longer drowning. I am learning to breathe again. I have a small community that understands me. I have a daughter who looks at me with pure love. And I am becoming visible again, not in the same way as before, but in a new way that matches the life I have now. This is my story. It is quiet, honest, and real. It is about losing myself for a while and finding the strength to return. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to English Medium Stories. Stay with us for more classic stories in easy English. My name is Agnes Gray. I grew up in a small house near a quiet village. My father was a kind man. He worked as a clergyman in a church. My mother was gentle and loving. I had one sister named Mary. She was sweet and calm. We did not have much money, but our home was warm and full of love. I was happy when I was young. I helped my mother at home. I read books and took long walks in the garden. I wanted to do something useful. I wanted to help my family because we did not have enough money. One year, my father made a mistake with some money he gave to another man for business. That man lost everything, and so did we. My father felt very sad. My mother stayed strong, but I could see she was worried. I wanted to help her. I thought, maybe I can work. But what kind of work could a young woman do? In those days, women did not have many choices. We could be teachers or governesses. I had read about governesses in books. It sounded like a good job. I wanted to teach children and earn my own money. I wanted to be brave and show that I could help my family. I told my mother my idea. She looked at me for a long time and then smiled. "It will be hard, my dear," she said softly. "Rich families are not always kind. But if you wish to try, I will not stop you." I was happy she trusted me. My father was worried but finally agreed. After some time, a letter came. A rich family wanted a governess for their 2 young children. The mother's name was Mrs. Bloomfield. She wrote that they needed someone patient and kind. I was so excited. I packed my clothes and said goodbye to my family. My mother hugged me tightly and said, "Remember who you are, Agnes. Be strong and good." When I arrived at the Bloomfields' big house, I felt nervous, but hopeful. The house was large and beautiful. Everything looked clean and expensive. I met Mrs. Bloomfield. She smiled at me, but her smile was cold. "You will teach my children," she said. "They are clever, but they need discipline." Then I met the children. The boy, Tom, was around 7 years old. He was rude and wild. The little girl, Marianne, was 5 and often cried. I tried to be kind, but they did not listen. When I told Tom to read, he threw the book on the floor. When I asked Marianne to write, she refused and said, "You are not my mother." I tried to stay calm. Every day I taught reading, writing, and math. But it was not easy. The children shouted and ran around. They did not respect me. When I told their mother, she only said, "You must control them better." I felt sad and lonely. I ate alone in a small room. The servants did not speak to me because I was not rich, and the family saw me as just a worker. I missed my own home. I missed my mother's voice and my sister's laughter. One day, Tom hurt a small bird on purpose. He laughed as the bird cried. I took the bird from him and told him not to be cruel. Mrs. Bloomfield came in and looked angry. "You must not speak to my son like that," she said. "He is just a child." I wanted to cry. I only wanted to teach them to be kind, but no one cared. That night, I sat in my room and cried quietly. I asked myself, why am I here? What did I do wrong? But I did not give up. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to prove that I could do this. Days passed, and I kept trying. But the Bloomfields never thanked me. They always blamed me for their children's behavior. I became tired and pale. I could not sleep well at night. I wrote letters to my mother and told her I was fine, but I did not tell her how sad I really was. I did not want her to worry. One morning, Mrs. Bloomfield came to me and said, "Agnes, we are sorry, but we no longer need you." I felt my heart break. I had worked so hard, and now they wanted me to leave. She said her sister would teach the children instead. I packed my small bag and left the house that same day. As I walked to the station, I felt free but also empty. I had failed my first job. I thought, maybe I am not good enough. Maybe I am not meant for this life. When I returned home, my mother opened the door and hugged me. I cried in her arms. She did not ask many questions. She just said, "You are home now. Rest, my dear." I was thankful for her love. I stayed at home for a few months and tried to forget the pain. But I knew I could not stop there. I still wanted to help my family. I wanted to try again. Soon, another letter came. A new family, the Murrays, needed a governess for their 2 older daughters. The pay was small, but I agreed. I told my mother, "This time, I will do better." She looked at me with gentle eyes and said, "You already do your best. Be kind to yourself." I smiled and tried to believe her. When the day came, I packed again and said goodbye. I was scared, but hopeful. Maybe this new place would be better. Maybe I would find peace and respect there. I did not know what would happen next, but I promised myself one thing. I would never stop trying to be good, even if the world was not kind. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. When I reached the Murray family home, I felt nervous again. The house was large, even bigger than the Bloomfields. But this time, I tried not to dream too much. I had learned my lesson. Rich families were not always kind, and their children were not always easy. Still, I hoped this place would be different. Mrs. Murray met me at the door. She was tall and proud. Her clothes were beautiful, and her voice was firm. "You will teach my daughters, Rosalie and Matilda," she said. "They are both clever girls, but they need guidance." I said, "Yes, ma'am. I will do my best." She looked at me for a moment and then nodded. "We will see," she said, and walked away. When I met Rosalie and Matilda, they smiled politely, but I could tell they were not excited to have a governess. Rosalie was 16. She was very pretty with bright blue eyes and golden hair. Matilda was 14. She liked to ride horses and talk loudly. She said what she thought, even when it was rude. I tried to speak kindly to them, but they often laughed at my simple clothes or my quiet voice. Every morning, I gave them lessons. I taught reading, writing, and French. I also helped them learn music. They did not listen much, but they were not as wild as the Bloomfield children. Still, Rosalie often looked bored. She liked to talk about dresses, parties, and handsome young men. Matilda preferred her horse to her books. She said she did not care about lessons. Sometimes I felt invisible in that house. At dinner, I sat alone again. I was not allowed to eat with the family. The servants were kind but distant. They called me Miss Gray, but they did not talk much to me. I spent my evenings reading or writing letters to my mother. She always wrote back with gentle words. Her letters gave me strength. One Sunday, we all went to church. I loved going to church because it was quiet and peaceful. That was where I first saw Mr. Weston. He was the new curate, a young clergyman with kind eyes. He spoke simply, but his words touched my heart. When he talked about kindness and truth, I felt like he understood me. After church, he greeted the people kindly. When he spoke to me, his voice was warm. "You are the governess at the Murray's house, I believe," he said. "Yes," I answered softly. "I hope your work is not too hard." I smiled a little. "It has its moments." He smiled too, and I felt a small comfort in my heart. Weeks passed, and I saw Mr. Weston often at church. Sometimes he came to visit Mrs. Murray because he knew her husband. When he spoke to me, he was always respectful. He never laughed at me or looked down on me like many others did. He asked about my lessons and listened when I spoke. I had not met a man like him before. He was quiet, good, and true. I did not say it out loud, but I began to think about him often. Rosalie noticed. She liked to tease me. "Agnes, I think Mr. Weston looks at you kindly," she said with a laugh. "He must like governesses." I blushed and said, "Please, don't say that." She only laughed more. Rosalie liked attention from men. She often spoke of a gentleman named Mr. Hatfield, another clergyman who was rich and handsome. She said she wanted to marry a man like him. I smiled but said nothing. I knew Rosalie's world was very different from mine. Sometimes I took long walks outside after lessons. I liked the quiet air and the sound of the wind in the trees. One day, I met Mr. Weston by chance on the road. He was carrying a small injured bird. "It fell from a tree," he said. "I want to take care of it." I smiled. "That is kind of you." He looked at me and said, "All life deserves kindness." We walked together for a short time. He asked about my family, and I told him about my parents and my sister. He listened carefully. When we reached the gate, he said, "You remind me of your mother, I think. Gentle and brave." His words stayed with me all night. Life at the Murrays was not easy, but I was learning. I worked hard every day. Mrs. Murray did not thank me, but she began to trust me more. Rosalie often told me her secrets. She said she wanted to marry a rich man, not for love, but for money. "Love is not enough," she said once. "Money is what makes people happy." I did not agree, but I did not argue. I only said, "True happiness comes from kindness, not gold." She laughed softly. "That sounds like something Mr. Weston would say." One cold winter evening, Mr. Weston came to the house with a basket of food for the poor. He asked me to help him give it to a sick old woman who lived nearby. Mrs. Murray said she was too busy, so I went with him. The snow was deep and the wind was cold, but I did not mind. We walked together through the fields, talking quietly. The old woman smiled when we arrived. Mr. Weston spoke to her kindly and gave her the food. I watched him and thought, "This is a good man." As we walked back, he said, "It is not always easy to do good, Miss Gray, but it is always worth it." I looked at him and said, "I believe that too." He smiled. "Then we think the same." My heart was full of a quiet joy I could not explain. When spring came, Rosalie began to receive many visitors. One of them was a young man named Sir Thomas Ashby. He was tall, rich, and liked to flatter her. Rosalie was very happy when he looked at her. She talked about him all the time. Mr. Weston came less often because he was busy with his church work. When I saw him, he seemed quiet and thoughtful. One day, I heard Rosalie tell her mother, "Mr. Weston is kind, but too poor. I would never marry a poor man." Her words hurt me more than I wanted to admit. As the months passed, Rosalie became engaged to Sir Thomas. She was excited and proud. Before she left home for her wedding, she came to my room. "Agnes," she said, "you should be happy for me." I smiled softly. "I am happy if you are." She hugged me lightly. "You are too serious, Agnes. You should try to enjoy life." I wanted to tell her that love was more than money, but I said nothing. I only wished her peace. After she left, the house felt quiet. Mr. Weston came again a few times, but he never stayed long. He said he might move to another parish. When he spoke, he was gentle as always, but I felt he was saying goodbye. After he left, I sat by the window and cried softly. I told myself not to hope for what I could never have. I was only a governess. He was a clergyman. Our lives were too far apart. Still, something inside me had changed. I was not the same scared girl who left home. I had learned that pain could make the heart stronger. I had learned that being kind and true was more important than being rich or admired. And even though I was lonely, I was proud of myself for staying good in a world that was not kind. After Rosalie's wedding, the house felt empty. The laughter and noise were gone. Matilda still lived there, but she spent most of her time outdoors with the horses. Mrs. Murray became colder. She spoke to me only about lessons or house rules. I often sat alone in my room, reading or writing letters to my mother. My heart was tired. I felt I had seen too much unkindness. Still, I did my work every day and tried not to complain. One morning, Mrs. Murray told me she would no longer need a governess. "Matilda will go to live with her aunt," she said. "You have done your duty, Miss Gray." Her words were polite, but her tone was cold. I thanked her quietly and packed my few things. I did not feel angry. I was only sad that another chapter of my life was ending. When I said goodbye to Matilda, she hugged me quickly. "You were good to me," she said. "Better than most people here." Those few words warmed my heart. I returned home. My mother welcomed me with open arms. She looked older, but her smile was still kind. My father had passed away not long before. I missed him, but I was glad he had not suffered. Now, it was just my mother and me. Life was simple, but peaceful. We decided to open a small school together in our village. We wanted to teach children who could not go to expensive schools. It was not a big dream, but it was an honest one. The first months were hard. We had only a few students, but soon more children came. They liked our lessons and our kindness. I taught reading and writing. My mother taught sewing and manners. We did not earn much, but we were happy. I felt useful again. Each morning, I woke up with purpose. I no longer worked for proud families. I worked for myself and for the good of others. Sometimes I still thought about Mr. Weston. I wondered where he was, if he was happy, if he had forgotten me. I tried not to dream about him, but my heart remembered his quiet voice and gentle smile. One evening, as the sun was setting, I went for a walk by the churchyard. I liked the silence there. The air was cool and the sky was pink and gold. As I turned the corner, I saw a man walking toward me. My heart began to beat fast. It was Mr. Weston. He looked surprised but happy. "Miss Gray," he said softly, "I did not expect to see you here." I smiled shyly. "I live here now," I said. "My mother and I have a small school." His eyes brightened. "That sounds wonderful," he said. "You were always meant to teach. I have just moved to this parish. I am the new curate here." For a moment I could not speak. I only felt a quiet joy inside. He walked with me to my house. My mother welcomed him kindly. He visited us often after that. Sometimes he helped with our school. He brought books for the children and spoke to them with patience and care. The children loved him. I did too, though I did not say it. We talked often about life, kindness, and faith. He always listened to me with respect. I felt peaceful when he was near. One evening, after helping me clean the classroom, he said quietly, "Miss Gray, I have wanted to say something for a long time." I looked at him, my heart trembling. He continued, "When I first met you, I saw your goodness. I admired your patience and strength. I have never forgotten you." I felt tears in my eyes. He took a small step closer. "I have a small house near the church," he said. "It is not grand, but it is full of peace. Would you come and share that peace with me? Will you be my wife?" I could not speak for a moment. My eyes filled with tears, but they were not from sadness. I whispered, "Yes, Mr. Weston, I will." He smiled, and I saw the same kindness in his eyes that had comforted me years ago. We married quietly a few months later. There was no rich party, no fine clothes, but there was love. My mother was happy. She said, "You have found someone good, Agnes, and that is more than gold." She lived with us in our little house near the church. Mr. Weston worked hard, and I helped with the school. The children laughed again, and our home was full of peace. Sometimes, when I walked in the garden at sunset, I thought about the years behind me, the pain, the loneliness, the lessons learned. I remembered the Bloomfields' cold house, the Murrays' proud laughter, the long nights when I felt forgotten. But I also remembered how each of those moments had made me stronger. I had learned that being kind when others are not kind is the hardest thing, and the most important. I was no longer a lonely governess. I was a wife, a teacher, and a friend. I did not live in a big house or wear fine clothes, but I had something better. I had peace. I had love that was quiet and true. And I had a heart that no longer felt small. Sometimes people think happiness means money, beauty, or fame, but I learned that real happiness is simple. It lives in small moments. A kind word, a helping hand, a heart that forgives. That is what my life taught me. That is what my story means. I started as a lonely governess, but I ended as a woman who found love in the most honest way, through kindness, patience, and truth. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to English Medium Stories. Stay with us for more classic stories in easy English.